Real-life stories you might not know. Part 1. In 1989, in the state of Missouri, USA, a young mother named Patricia Stalling was happily preparing to welcome her second child. Life seemed peaceful, until one day, a horrifying incident turned her world upside down. A tragedy no one saw coming, and a medical mistake that almost destroyed her life. Patricia's firstborn son, little Ryan, suddenly fell ill. He began vomiting, losing consciousness, and was rushed to the hospital. After a series of tests, doctors were shocked to find ethylene glycol in his blood, a toxic chemical found in car antifreeze. It's a deadly substance if ingested. Patricia and her husband firmly insisted on their innocence and even had a clear alibi. At first, doctors thought perhaps Ryan had accidentally come into contact with the substance somewhere, but because it was too dangerous, Ryan was placed in foster care and his heartbroken parents were only allowed to visit him for 1 hour a week. A month and a half later, during one of these rare visits, Ryan suddenly fell gravely ill again. He was rushed to the hospital, but this time his condition was critical, and he tragically passed away not long after. Immediately, Patricia was charged with murdering her son by poisoning him with antifreeze. The young mother screamed, wept, and repeatedly cried out her innocence, but no one believed her. She was imprisoned, devastated, and hopeless. Ironically, while still in prison, Patricia gave birth to her second child. But tragedy struck again. Just a few days after being born, the newborn began showing the exact same symptoms as Ryan: vomiting, slipping into unconsciousness. This time, however, the baby was under strict supervision, with no one able to poison him. That was when a team of doctors decided to reopen the case files and conduct deeper specialized tests. The results were shocking. Patricia and both her children suffered from an extremely rare genetic disorder called methylmalonic acidemia. This condition prevents the body from processing certain substances properly, causing it to produce a compound chemically similar to ethylene glycol. If untreated or triggered by the wrong foods, it can lead to symptoms mimicking poisoning and even death, just as it had with little Ryan. The truth had finally come to light, but it took 2 more years before Patricia was officially declared innocent and released from prison. A grieving mother, wrongfully accused, shunned by society, all because of a medical oversight and a hasty judgment. Patricia Stalling's story became a powerful cautionary tale in both the medical and legal communities in America. Never rush to a conclusion, for the truth might be hiding in the place you least expect. In our modern world, where science and medicine have given people the ability to safely and legally manage reproduction, there still exist stories that defy all regulations and ethical boundaries. And one of the most extraordinary among them is the tale of Jonathan Meyer, a man famously known as the king of sperm donors in our era. Jonathan Meyer is a man from the Netherlands. In his country, the law is clear. One sperm donor is allowed to father no more than 25 children per clinic and can only donate to a limited number of clinics. But Jonathan, driven by an ambition no one could quite understand, decided to break every rule. He visited countless sperm donation clinics across the country, donating everywhere he could. Before long, he had fathered 500 children in the Netherlands alone. But Jonathan didn't stop there. He took his mission online. Through his personal advertisements, Jonathan proudly claimed that his family had no history of diabetes, Alzheimer's, or cancer. The men in his lineage kept thick, glorious hair into old age, suffered no heart diseases, and carried no genetic defects. These promises attracted women from all over the world. women who dreamed of having a child with perfect genes. Soon, transactions began happening not only across Europe, but in Latin America and even Asia. In fact, many of these women would pay for Jonathan's travel expenses, flying him out just so he could deliver his genetic gift. The result? By the age of just 43, Jonathan Meyer is now believed to have fathered around 3,000 biological children worldwide. An astonishing, almost unbelievable figure. Scientists have called him the modern-day Genghis Khan because of the sheer spread of his DNA. And the consequences are deeply concerning. With such a large number of offspring, especially concentrated in certain regions, particularly in the Amsterdam area, experts warn it's dangerously likely that his children may unknowingly date or marry their half-siblings, risking severe genetic consequences for future generations. Jonathan Meyer's story isn't just shocking because of the numbers. It raises serious questions about ethics, legal control, and the risks of unchecked reproductive technology. Behind those numbers are thousands of children and a future clouded by genetic and social dangers. To this day, Jonathan Meyer remains one of the most controversial living genetic phenomena in the world. In a remote rural village of Volgograd, Russia, there lived a man whose name once made the entire region shudder in fear, Dmitry Malyshev. He was an infamous murderer, a cannibal, sentenced to 25 years in prison for his monstrous crimes. But fate took a dark twist. He didn't return home in shackles, but from the bloody front lines of the war in Ukraine. According to Fyodor Kadovba, the head of Verkinsky village, Malyshev came back earlier this year, his face marred by injuries and shrapnel still embedded in his arm. "I met him at the store," Kadovba recalled with a wary tone. "He said hello, told me he's getting treatment, and once he's healed, he'll head back to the front." People in the village haven't forgotten the horror from 10 years ago. Back then, Malyshev killed a man from Tajikistan, cut out his heart, fried it, and ate it right there on the spot. Disturbingly, he recorded the entire gruesome act on video. And before that, he was part of a criminal gang, having shot 2 businessmen dead to steal their car. They even plotted an ambush to murder police officers and seize their weapons. A plan that thankfully failed before it could be carried out. But in October 2023, Malyshev signed a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense and joined Storm 5, a special unit made up of convicts and the most dangerous criminals. When asked why a cannibal would volunteer to fight, he coldly replied, "I wanted to defend traditional values. What would you do if your little daughter was taught in elementary school how to properly use a condom? Or if men were kissing each other in the streets? Is that normal to you? It's not normal to me." And the terrifying truth is, Malyshev isn't alone. Before him, Putin had pardoned another cannibal, Denis Gorin, who had murdered and eaten at least 4 people. Another convict, Nikolai Ogolobiak, who took part in a ritual killing of 4 teenagers before dismembering and eating parts of their bodies, was also sent to the front. This all became possible after the Russian State Duma passed a law exempting convicts from criminal liability if they signed up to fight. Since then, pardons were replaced with conditional releases, forcing these criminals to stay at the front lines until the war is over. The story of Dmitry Malyshev and other cannibals on the Ukrainian battlefield paints a horrifying picture of war's consequences. A nation so desperate it turns to unleash monsters in human form. War not only scars the land, but also brings out the darkest, most nightmarish corners of humanity. Tales so chilling, they haunt you in the dead of night. Have you ever come across a photograph so disturbing it lingers in your mind, leaving you cold and uneasy? Today I saw not one, but two such images. And together, they tell a chilling story about a forgotten chapter of American history. A time when innocence was stolen and injustice hid behind the mask of kindness. It happened in 1937 in the state of Tennessee, USA. A time when what we now consider horrific and unimaginable was, for some, just the way things were. The first story is about Homer Peel, a 34-year-old man, and Geneva Peel, a 10-year-old girl. Geneva was an orphan, a child with no one to protect her. Destined for the poorhouse, she seemed to have no future. That's when Homer Peel stepped in, not to save her, but to marry her. He lied to authorities, claiming Geneva was 12 years old, just old enough to be legally wed. Even though Tennessee had just passed a law banning child marriages, Homer defied it. When the truth came out, Peel stood before a judge and claimed he was rescuing Geneva from poverty, that annulling the marriage would condemn her to misery. Astonishingly, the judge agreed. The marriage remained intact. Geneva, at 10 years old, was sent back to live as Homer Peel's wife. In front of reporters, Homer kissed the little girl on the lips and reportedly promised her a pretty new hat for her loyalty. But Geneva's was not the only tragedy of its kind. That same year, in a small Tennessee town, 9-year-old Eunice Winstead married 22-year-old Charlie Johns. Their marriage sent shockwaves across the nation after it was reported in Time and Life magazines. The image of a child bride, barely taller than the wedding bouquet she held, sparked a wave of public outrage. It was so scandalous that it finally forced lawmakers to act. The uproar over Eunice and Charlie's marriage led Tennessee to raise its legal marriage age to 16. And it didn't stop there. Minnesota, Rhode Island, and Washington, D.C. followed suit, passing similar laws in the wake of the national scandal. Life, however, moved on for these girls. Geneva Peel stayed with Homer for nearly 40 years, having 7 children before they divorced in 1975. Geneva passed away in 2017 at the age of 92. As for Eunice Winstead Johns, she remained married to Charlie Johns for almost 60 years. Their first child was born when Eunice was just 15 years old. They had 9 children in total. Charlie died in 1997, and Eunice followed in 2006. These stories are a harrowing reminder that history isn't always distant. Sometimes it's closer than we think, that behind old photographs lie real people, real tragedies, and moments when society failed its most vulnerable. 2 images, 2 little girls, and a nation forced to confront a horrifying truth about itself. If you enjoyed this video, please give the channel a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.